Eli Porter bent over, wiping away streaks of dust along the ground floor hallway of the Viridian Systems headquarters. His hands trembled slightly with age, but the movements of his mop were still steady and precise, as if he had been connected to these floor tiles for a lifetime. No one paid him any mind. Young employees hurried past. Mid-level managers glanced over and then looked away. On his chest was just a small name tag, Eli P. Janitor. No title, no morning greetings. No one knew how illustrious his past had once been. 6 years ago, he himself had sat on the 14th floor where the conference room had high-end leather chairs, LED screens, and water bottles labeled with each attendee's name. Back then, he was the director of internal security, the man who decided the fate of $1 million contract. Yet now, he was a shadow in the very building he once managed. The only person who stopped to ask after him was Noah Bennett, a newly hired IT employee. The young man was still awkward, his shirt unironed, his shoelaces loose, and his eyes lost in the unfamiliar corporate world. When he first walked into the lobby, the first smile Noah received that day came from Eli himself. "You're looking for HR, aren't you? Don't let Mr. Craig's face scare you. Go straight, then turn left." Second desk. Craig Wade, a name that would soon be etched into Noah's mind, his direct supervisor, and also the first person to make him feel small. When he met Craig, he was immediately met with a sarcastic remark about his old shoes and wrinkled shirt. "I hope your work isn't as messy as your appearance." Craig continued, his tone as cold as a knife's edge. "If you want to stay out of trouble, don't get involved with that janitor. Around here, people like him only drag others down." The entire office fell silent. Noah stood there, trying to smile, but his heart felt cold. He couldn't understand why someone like Eli, the only person who had shown him kindness, was treated like a guilty shadow to be avoided. Time passed slowly on his first day. Everyone went to lunch, leaving only Eli to quietly rearrange the chairs in the conference room, wiping clean every coffee stain someone had carelessly left behind. Nearby, 2 young employees were chatting by the coffee machine. "Eli, I heard he used to be a big boss." "Really? How did he end up as a janitor?" "Rumor has it he dared to report someone high up and then lost his position. It's just a rumor. Who knows?" Eli heard them. He paused for just a second, then continued wiping the table. But this time, his eyes were no longer just looking at the stain, they were looking through time, through the years that had made him vanish from the light. And from that moment on, Noah began to see the old janitor in a different light. He didn't yet know that he was about to embark on a journey that would turn the entire system upside down, where the truth had been buried for 6 long years, all because one man had dared to stand up. On the afternoon of his second day of work, Noah was nearly exhausted from getting acquainted with a ton of outdated equipment. As he was preparing to print a document to submit to the accounting department, the large printer suddenly let out an ominous sound, a paper jam. Noah bit his lip, struggling to remove the paper for 5 minutes to no avail. He didn't want to call his manager for fear of being scolded for being clumsy. As he was bent over, rummaging through the drawer beneath the machine, a deep, calm voice came from behind him. "Tray number 3. The 160 GSM paper is stuck in the second fuser roller." Noah looked up. Eli was standing there, mop in hand, his expression unsurprised. Noah followed his instructions, opened tray 3, reached his hand into the correct fuser roller, and pulled out a folded stack of paper. The machine started working again immediately. He let out a sigh of relief, looking at the man with a stunned expression. "How did you know?" Eli just shrugged. "I was the one who installed this machine 4 years ago." Noah was speechless. At that moment, he just thought the man was joking. But there was not a hint of a joke in Eli's eyes. He just nodded gently and turned away, continuing his work of mopping the hallway floor as if nothing special had just happened. Less than an hour later, while searching for the old record storage room to file a document, Noah got lost in the labyrinth of basement corridors. The rows of shelves were endless, covered in thick dust. The light was dim, and no one was around. He began to panic. Just then, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway. "Eli, the storage room isn't this way," he said softly. "The service route is faster." He led the way without needing to look at any signs. When they reached the storage room door, Eli pointed to a wooden shelving unit. "Don't put anything on shelf E4. It was once infested with termites. Since 2018, it still hasn't been replaced." Noah stood frozen. "How do you know it had termites since 2018? Eli stopped, his eyes glinting with something very deep, very old. "Because I was the one who wrote the report requesting its replacement. But no one approved it." Noah couldn't say a word. A series of questions began to form in his mind. Why could a janitor remember the exact year of a termite infestation? Why did he know the technical specifications of a modern printer better than an IT employee? And why did he remain a janitor so calmly forgotten by the entire company as if he were guarding something? That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He turned on a lamp, opened his company laptop, and accessed the internal personnel management system. He typed the name Eli Porter. The result appeared: current position, janitorial staff, main building, Viridian Systems. Start date 6 years ago. Previous record, no data available. Additional notes: voluntarily transferred position for health reasons. Noah frowned. An empty file, no work history, no performance reviews. Not a single line of information about previous positions. He dug into a secondary storage drive. After a few searches, Noah found an old, blurry image file that hadn't been completely deleted. A photo from a Viridian Executive Board meeting 6 years ago. In the middle of the photo was a man wearing a badge that read, "Director. Internal risk." It was Eli. Noah sat bolt upright. A director working as a janitor. No one had ever mentioned it. Not a single word. Not one piece of internal news. Only one thing was clear. Eli Porter had been buried. And not because he made the wrong choice, but because he chose the right person to tell the truth to. The next day, Noah decided not to go straight to the office. Instead, He sent a short message to an old email address he found in the 2016 HR data L. Munro at Viridian Systems, old belonging to Linda Munro, the former chief accountant, who was in the same department as Eli, according to the group photo from 6 years ago. Unsure if the message would even be delivered, Noah wrote just one line: "I want to ask you about Eli Porter. I need to know why he's no longer on the 14th floor." Less than an hour later, a message arrived: Willow Cafe, 3:00 p.m. Sit at the corner table. LM. Noah arrived on time. The cafe was small and quiet. A woman with silver hair sat there, holding a cup of tea, but her eyes never left the entrance. When she saw Noah walk in, she gave a slight nod, showing no surprise. "You're new at Viridian, aren't you?" Noah sat down and nodded. "I saw his photo in an old file." Noah began. "And I also see him every morning, mopping the floor. I don't understand." Linda set her teacup down. Her hand trembled slightly. "There are some things people don't want to understand, young man. Because once you understand, there's no turning back." Noah fell silent. Then he asked directly, "Eli Porter used to be a director, didn't he?" Linda looked at him. This time, her eyes were no longer guarded. "Yes, he used to be the most righteous person in that entire system. The only one who dared to stand up against numbers that could lie." Noah swallowed dryly. "What happened to him?" Linda sighed, her voice dropping as if recounting a stormy night. "Eli discovered a major financial fraud. A contract with a partner company had its figures manipulated. He gathered evidence, wrote a report, signed it, and sent it straight to the regional director." Noah leaned forward. And then what Linda was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Just 2 weeks later, Eli received a notice of temporary transfer for health reasons. A week after that, the HR system wiped his old record clean. The report vanished. No one mentioned his name again, and the person who was promoted to replace him." She paused, looking directly at Noah. "Is the man who is your boss now Griffin Wade?" The air in the cafe seemed to freeze. Noah felt his palms begin to sweat, not out of fear, but because all the pieces were starting to fit together. Griffin's contemptuous look, the warning to not get involved with Eli, the erased file, the secrets in the basement. None of it was a coincidence anymore. "Why didn't anyone speak up?" Noah asked. Linda was silent. Then she answered with pain in her voice, "Because everyone knew that if you tell the truth without anyone to back you up, you don't just lose your job, you disappear, like him, like many others." A gentle breeze blew past, rustling the leaves of the trees outside the glass window. Inside Noah, something had changed. He stood up, bowed his head slightly in thanks. Linda watched him go, then called out one last sentence: "If you're planning to do something, be prepared, because when you stir up the past, the present will start to attack you." And Noah knew. From this moment on, he was no longer just walking into a company. He was walking into a maze built to hide a colossal truth with silence, fear, and burned reports. That afternoon, just as Noah returned from his meeting with Linda, the internal phone on his desk rang. The screen displayed just two cold words: Wade, office. He took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Noah, I need to see you. Right now. Conference room 4, not a word of explanation. Conference room 4 was at the end of the 5th floor hallway, a place few people went to late in the afternoon. When Noah walked in, the room contained only a single long table, 2 chairs facing each other, and Griffin Wade, already seated, sipping a smoothie with a suspiciously relaxed expression. "Close the door," he said. Without looking up, Noah complied. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed in the empty space, like a reminder that from this moment on, there was no turning back. Griffin looked up, a calculated smile on his face. "I've looked at your file, Noah. Nothing special, but nothing to complain about either. A clean slate. I like that." He nodded, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "Thanks. I'm still trying to learn." Griffin leaned forward, his gaze growing colder. "Learning is good. But there's something more important here. It's knowing your limits. At Viridian, some people have been too curious in the past, and you know they're not here anymore." Noah remained silent. "I hear," Griffin continued. "You seem friendly with the janitor. Eli." He kept his voice even. "He was the first person to give me directions, and also the only one who helped me fix the printer." Griffin chuckled softly. "You really think he's just a janitor?" Noah looked him straight in the eye, not answering. Griffin placed his smoothie on the table, his voice lowered, no longer beating around the bush. "This isn't a company for little boys playing detective. Here, anyone who digs too deep buries themselves. You understand?" The air in the room grew thick. Noah could feel the hair on his arms stand on end. But he still replied, slowly, "I'm not good at pretending I don't see things." That sentence made Griffin pause for a beat. He leaned back in his chair, narrowing his eyes as if reassessing the person in front of him. Not bad. Kid. Gutsy. But Viridian wasn't built on courage. It was built on compliance. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "This is a transfer order. If you sign, you'll be transferred to the Seattle South branch. Small team, light work, double the salary. A comfortable start." Noah looked down at the paper. An offer. An invitation to get away from the storm. But it was also a sugar-coated trap. A reminder, either you get lost or you get erased like Eli. "And if I don't sign," Noah asked. Griffin shrugged. "Then perhaps the environment here will soon make you feel that you're not a good fit anymore. No shouting, no slamming the table, no threats with a fist, just silent. Dirty power, the kind that had killed so many dreams before." Noah slowly pushed the file back toward Griffin. "I'm not going anywhere." Griffin narrowed his eyes. Silence. The two men sat facing each other, as if in a chess game where the pieces had begun to move. "You think you're going to win?" he asked quietly. Noah stood up, his voice unchanged. "I don't need to win. I just need to see the truth." And he walked out of the room. But Noah understood from this moment on, he was in the crosshairs. Every step would be watched. Every email would be monitored. And he had only one path left to take: find irrefutable proof, before he disappeared himself. The next day, late in the afternoon, Noah received an unusual work order through the internal system. Task assignment: inspect basement storage, assess equipment condition, urgent. Assigned by Griffin Wade. No notes, no reason, no deadline. A sense of unease crept up Noah's spine, but he still printed the order, picked up a large box of files as requested, and headed toward the west staircase, the one leading to the rarely used basement. The heavy wooden door opened with a dry creak. No guide lights, no warning signs. Darkness enveloped everything below. A dim fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting his silhouette on the wall like a lost ghost. The air was musty, cold, isolated. Noah placed one hand on the railing, slowed his breathing to calm himself, and then stepped down, one step at a time. Step 1, step 2. On the third step, a piercing sound rang out. Crack! The rotten wood splintered under his feet. The box of files flew from Noah's hands, papers scattering everywhere. He slipped forward, his hand grabbing the railing in a life-or-death moment. A moment of dead silence. Then, hurried footsteps echoed from behind. Careful. A firm arm grabbed his shoulder, pulling him back to safety. It was Eli. He bent down, picking up each of the scattered documents. His voice was low but firm. "That step has been rotten since last year. I reported it. No one fixed it." Noah, still catching his breath, looked at him with bewilderment. "Did they do this on purpose?" Eli didn't answer right away. He gathered the papers, then looked up at Noah. "They don't have to do anything. They just need to know who's going down and let whatever happens, happen." A heavy silence filled the space. "They told you to come down here, didn't they?" Eli asked, though his tone already knew the answer. Noah nodded. He clenched his fist, his eyes still fixed on the broken step where he had nearly risked his life for a simple assignment. Eli walked over to him and said softly, "Next time, when someone tells you to work alone in a place no one goes to, don't go, or go with someone who knows the way back." The fluorescent light overhead flickered one more time, then went out. The entire space plunged into darkness. Only the sound of their two pairs of footsteps quietly ascending remained, one carrying an old wound, the other having just escaped the first fall on the path to find the truth. That night, Noah lay in bed with his eyes wide open. His mind kept replaying the image of the rotten staircase, the sound of splintering wood, and Griffin's chillingly calm gaze. He sat up and opened his laptop. He accessed the task assignment management system. The file appeared. Task name: Inspect Basement Storage. Approver: Griffin Wade. Notes: None. Time: Created 3:03 p.m. Just 10 minutes after Noah refused to sign the transfer form. A line of red text stood out at the bottom of the document. Urgent. Assigned individually, Noah Bennett. He sat in silence, his hands cold, not because he had almost fallen, but because for the first time he understood at Viridian. No one needed to kill you with a gun, just a staircase no one had repaired, and a well-timed slip. At 6:45 the next morning, while the Viridian office was still shrouded in silence and the fluorescent lights weren't all on yet, Noah received a short message from Eli West Hallway. Old storage room. Bring your trust and a clear head. No map, no explanation. He arrived at the designated place. The West Hallway was rarely used. The walls were painted a silver grey. The old signs were peeling, and there was only one locked wooden door with a rusty plaque that faintly read, "Storage, do not use." Eli was already there, holding a set of keys that looked as old as the company itself. He said nothing, just took out a key and inserted it into the lock. Click. The door opened. Inside was a room covered in the dust of time, an old wooden desk with chipped edges, a cracked leather chair, and on the desk a picture frame lying face down. On the wall were faint, light patches where awards, certificates, and achievements had once hung. Now only shadows of memories remained. Eli walked in, picked up the picture frame, and turned it over. In the photo was him sitting at the head of a conference table, surrounded by his team, all dressed impeccably, smiling with pride. But the Eli in the photo wasn't smiling. His eyes were staring straight into the camera, so serious it was unsettling. "This used to be my office," Eli said. "The meeting room for the Internal Risk Management Department." Noah lightly touched the surface of the desk, a thick layer of dust, but the desk was still sturdy. "You used to run this whole floor," Noah said softly. "Why didn't you leave this place? Why continue working as a janitor in the very building that was once yours?" Eli placed the photo back down. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was as steady as a rock. "Because they didn't fire me. They did something worse. They erased me." Noah turned to look at him, his eyes wide. "They said I resigned for health reasons, but I never wrote that letter. I never met with the HR committee that day. They used a fake report with a forged signature and wiped my records from the system. No termination, no dispute, no resistance. I just ceased to exist." Eli walked to the wall where the awards had once hung and lightly touched a rectangular light spot. "This was the award I received for uncovering the first financial fraud. And it was from the person I trusted most." Noah clenched his fists. "Was it Griffin Wade?" Eli nodded. He altered the numbers in a contract with a third-party partner, hiding a fund transfer under technical expenses to legitimize an illegal budget withdrawal. "I collected the documents, wrote the report, and sent it to the regional director. Within 14 days, my name was no longer on any group emails. 21 days later, I became a janitor." Noah's voice choked up. "Didn't anyone stand with you?" Eli looked at Noah, truly looked at him for the first time. Yes, 7 people signed with me. Accounting, legal, an audit assistant, HR. All of them disappeared from the system within 6 months. 1 transferred without leaving a record. 1 suddenly resigned for personal reasons. 1, I heard, became unable to work due to severe depression. He paused. I thought if I stayed silent, no one else would have to suffer. But I was wrong. A long silence hung in the air like an unspoken apology. Noah took a deep breath, a weight like a stone in his chest. I don't know if there's anything I can do, but I won't let this go. Not for you, but for justice itself. Eli smiled faintly, the first smile Noah had seen from him. I don't need anyone to give me back my title. I just need someone to remember that I was right. And in that old, dusty room, where certificates and hopes once hung, a truth was spoken not with a voice of anger, but with the quiet resilience of a survivor, one who chose to keep walking, even when the entire system had turned its back on him. That afternoon, Noah sat alone in the employee break room at a corner table next to the vending machine, a spot no one used at the end of the day. In front of him was his laptop, displaying a comparative spreadsheet. The personnel list of Viridian Systems from 2017 retrieved from an old archive that Eli had shown him how to access, the current list for 2023. Noah didn't search by eye. He used a data filtering algorithm, and the results appeared, chillingly clear. Of the 7 names that had co-signed Eli's fraud report back then, only 1 still existed in the system. The other 6 had vanished without a trace. Noah typed the first name, Denise Holloway, audit specialist. LinkedIn, inactive. Internal file resigned. Reason unknown. No letter of resignation. The second person, Mark Irving, internal legal department. Only a single note, withdrew from the profession for mental health reasons. Noah gripped the mouse tightly, not because one person had disappeared, but because the entire system had been designed to make those who dared to speak the truth choose to retreat. He continued, the third person, Sasha Green, financial coordination assistant. Personal Facebook no longer existed. Email bounced back with user no longer active. The fourth person, Trevor Lau, Regional Operations Department. The last piece of information was an old status update from 5 years ago. Losing a job isn't scary. Losing your faith is what keeps you up at night. Noah slowly typed the 5th name, then the 6th, and each time it was the same silence, an empty file, a quiet disappearance from the system. Only one person remained, with a handwritten note from Eli next to their name, Eleanor Price, South Sound branch. Hasn't left yet. A spark of hope flashed in Noah's eyes. He took a screenshot, saved the address, and hurried out of the office. The next afternoon, Noah drove for over 2 hours to the South Sound branch located in an old industrial park, quite a distance from the main headquarters. There was no modern glass building, no LED signs, just a warehouse converted into an office. He walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist, "Excuse me, Is there an Eleanor Price here? The young woman pointed to the right. She's checking the payment counter in Warehouse C. Should be done with her shift in about 5 minutes. Noah waited. When Eleanor appeared, her hair was tied back in a low ponytail, her old uniform slightly faded, her face still showing a determined look despite being in her 50s. She eyed Noah with suspicion. "Who are you?" Noah gently showed her his intern ID with the Viridian logo. "I'm from the main office. My name is Noah. I'm here because of Eli Porter." Eleanor's expression changed in a flash. Her eyes blinked lightly as if that name was a scar that had never healed. She said nothing. She just turned around and gestured, "Follow me." They entered a small room in the back. The door closed, and Eleanor pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her wallet. She placed it on the table and unfolded it. "This is a copy of the minutes from Eli's disciplinary hearing. I've kept it for 6 years." Noah leaned down to read. The title was in bold: "Recommendation for transfer due to violation of internal reporting procedures." But it was the last line, handwritten in faint red ink, that sent a chill down Noah's spine. "Do not forward this document to the legal department." He looked up, meaning. They knew he was right, but they still treated him as if he were wrong. Eleanor nodded slightly, her eyes welling up with tears. "I stayed silent because my husband was undergoing chemotherapy at the time. I couldn't risk it. I told myself, as long as I don't help them, I'm not guilty. But now I know silence is also a choice." Noah was speechless. Eleanor clenched the old piece of paper. "If now is the time to make things right, I'm ready." And in a place that seemed to have been forgotten. Two people who had once chosen different paths, one brave, one silent, now came together with a common goal to pull the truth out of the darkness, regardless of the consequences. That evening, Noah returned to the main headquarters, using the excuse of forgetting something to enter the building after everyone had gone home. In his backpack, he carried something special, a mini pet camera, the kind used to monitor animals at home, but with infrared recording and motion detection capabilities. His destination, the old storage room where Eli had once worked and where Griffin had secretly entered after midnight. Noah opened the door to the room, walked in, and installed the camera in a corner of the ceiling, its lens aimed directly at the entrance. He programmed the device to send an alert if it detected motion after business hours. No one knew. No trace. Monday morning, 11:36 p.m. A notification arrived on Noah's phone. His eyes widened. He turned on the camera to review the recording. A figure appeared. A man in a grey shirt, with a familiar gait, entered the storage room. In his hand was a stack of files. He didn't turn on the lights. He moved straight to a metal filing cabinet in the corner of the room. He opened the cabinet, scanned through the files, slipped the stack of documents into a narrow slot, and then locked it with a private key. He paused the frame, zoomed in on the face. There was no doubt it was Griffin Wade. Noah shivered. Why did he have to return to a room that had been decommissioned 6 years ago? What was he hiding in there, Tuesday morning, Noah arrived earlier than usual. He brought the set of storage system keys that Eli had kept from his time as director. Eli had instructed, "You'll need the third one from the right. Don't ask why I still have it. Some things have to wait for the right time to be opened again." He stood in front of the old metal cabinet. His heart pounded. He inserted the key. Click. The door swung open. Inside was a black file folder, unlabeled, with no title. He pulled it out and placed it on the table. The first page read, "Financial irregularities, verified by Eli Porter, Mark Irving, Denise Holloway." Inside was a complete set of documents, spreadsheets, invoices, audit reports, and most terrifying of all, internal cost allocation memos personally edited by Griffin to legitimize the fraudulent cash flow. Each page was dated, signed, and noted. This wasn't just evidence. This was a confession that had been buried alive. Noah brought the documents to Eli during their lunch break, in the small janitor's closet in the basement, a place few people frequented. Eleanor was also there, bringing a scanned copy of Eli's disciplinary hearing. The three of them sat around a folding plastic table. Before them were the video of Griffin entering the file room, the fraudulent documents from 2017, Eleanor's handwritten testimony. Eli looked at each item, his eyes lingering longest on the paper with his own signature back then. He had believed that justice would be heard. But now, he looked at Noah. "You did what I didn't dare to do in the dark." Noah replied, "Because I knew you never let the fire go out." Eleanor looked at them both, then pulled a crumpled old paper from her leather wallet and carefully unfolded it. "This is the list of the 7 people who signed the report. I remember each one. And I know where to find one more someone who was scared, but never abandoned their conscience." Eli nodded. "Then we start there. We don't need to bring the whole system down, just enough evidence to force it to clean up its own mess." And in a small room, with a slow-turning ceiling fan and dim light, a counterattack began. Not with noise, not with banners, only with the persistence of those who had once been pushed down, and now chose to stand up. Of the 7 people who had signed Eli's financial report that year, 6 had disappeared as if they had never existed. Only one last name remained: Eleanor Price, a former internal HR specialist. According to Eli's handwritten note, she was still working at the South Bay branch, nearly a 3-hour drive from the main headquarters. Late that afternoon, Noah and Eleanor Monroe set out. The South Bay branch was nestled in an old industrial park. The scenery looked dated, but the atmosphere was strangely peaceful, unlike the cold center of power at the main headquarters. Noah and Eleanor walked up to the reception desk and made an inquiry. An employee pointed to the end of the hallway. "Ms. Price is checking the equipment in the technical warehouse. You can wait in the side break room." 15 minutes later, a woman with salt and pepper hair, wearing a pale shirt, walked in. Her posture was still agile, her eyes sharp and slightly guarded. When she heard the name Eli Porter, she froze. Her eyes flickered like a memory door forced open after years of being locked shut. Noah presented his intern ID. "I'm Noah. From headquarters. I'm trying to restore a piece of the truth that someone tried to bury. Eleanor Price was silent for a few seconds, then gestured for them to follow her to a small room behind the warehouse. Inside, there was nothing but a table, a few chairs, and an old whiteboard. She gently closed the door, then opened her wallet, so old the leather was worn and tired, and pulled out a quarter-folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, its corners slightly torn. I've kept this for 6 years, because I knew someday someone would ask. Noah unfolded the paper. His eyes immediately stopped on the first line. Minutes of internal meeting. Disciplinary review of Mr. Eli Porter. March 4th. The list of attendees was clearly listed: Regional Director, Legal Representative, HR, Audit, and Griffin Wade. The content of the meeting was a long series of accusations, procedural violations, leaking financial information, damaging the company's reputation. But it was the last line that made Noah's blood run cold. Do not forward these minutes to the legal department. Handle internally. Record not to be stored on the official system. Handwritten. Red ink. A faint signature. G. W. Eleanor Monroe looked at Eleanor Price, her voice choked with emotion. You knew he was innocent, didn't you? Eleanor Price sat down. Her eyes were no longer sharp, but as if they had just shed a heavy burden. I knew. I was there that day. I saw the look in Eli's eyes when he said, I was just doing my job, and I also saw the others' heads bowed, silent, avoiding his gaze. Noah asked softly, Why didn't you say anything all these years? Eleanor Price looked down at the paper. My husband had just been hospitalized for cancer. If I lost my job, the insurance would go with it. I chose my family, but with every passing year, I felt like I was nursing a wound. She looked at the two people across from her. If now is the time to make things right, I won't be silent anymore. I will write a statement. I will confirm that this document is real. Noah gently squeezed Eleanor Monroe's hand under the table. He could feel it clearly. This moment was a turning point. Not because of the paper, but because someone who had once chosen silence had now chosen to stand on the side of the light. And in an old room in a forgotten branch, one of the last crucial links had returned. The truth was no longer in scattered pieces. It was beginning to come together into a force strong enough to confront the entire system. That evening, at a small coffee shop outside the company's area, 3 people, Eli, Noah, and Eleanor, sat around a worn wooden table. No fancy cappuccinos, no glossy conference tables, just an old laptop, an external hard drive, and a faded leather-bound notebook. Eli opened the laptop, his movements slow but steady. We're not just sending documents. We have to tell the whole story in the correct sequence, complete, with evidence attached. Noah nodded, his hand moving the mouse to drag a file into a folder. Truth 0001. Zip. Eleanor opened her notebook and began to list the video of Griffin's nighttime entry into the file room.